present here the results of a study that we have conducted over the last year. What we are going to present is a summary of what you can find in our report. And this was, it's available in 3 languages. I think there's a link on this page somewhere that you can download if you are interested in learning more details. Let me introduce it briefly. This is a teamwork. We had Odon from Mexico, my colleague from Mexico. We had João Dedeca and Larissa. They are my students. Rodolfo Gomes is my assistant at International Energy Initiative. Judith is Odon's assistant in Mexico. So they are responsible as well for this work. This is just to have a glimpse of the front page of the English report. And as I said, you can have it downloaded in Portuguese and in Spanish as well. Let me go ahead. So this study had the main objective to provide this overview, the current picture of, and also the near-term development of renewable energy technologies for electricity production in some Latin American countries. We analyzed the official projections in those countries, the existing regulations, and we tried also to assess which directions these regulations are going. And we also did an interesting overview of the stakeholders that are present in these several countries. The countries that, the presenter already mentioned, but although we speak about Latin America, in fact, we are focusing on countries, Argentina, Brazil, Central America, Chile, Peru, Colombia, Venezuela, and Mexico. This group is responsible for more than 90% of electricity production in Latin America anyway. We are talking about renewable technologies, but we are excluding large hydro plants. We are concentrating on small hydro plants, which in some countries is below 20, and Brazil is below 30 megawatt. We'll be talking about wind energy, biomass for electricity production, and solar PV and geothermal. All this information is based on public available literature, official documents, and reports. We didn't do any field work or new primary data. We didn't have the time, to dig new or primary data for this study. In some cases, we also relied on some personal contacts that we had, and some colleagues that we had throughout these countries that I mentioned. This slide just presents the structure of our presentation. I'll be talking about the current picture, the trends and drivers for expanding, which are the drivers that are pushing the expansion in this near future for these set of technologies that I mentioned. Let's look a little bit on what are the policies in place, what are the regulations in place in these countries, and do some comparison which is more advanced, what are types of policies that these countries are following recently. As I said, we also talk a little about stakeholders that are present in these countries, and towards the end of my concluding part, we'll try to highlight the most promising technology in countries that we found out of our research. So let's see the current situation on this renewable electricity production. We have here a table which we will also find that in our report, and it shows the estimated electricity generation potentials for these technologies and sources that I mentioned. But these values were found in the literature, but should be looked at very carefully because they come from several authors and studies, and most of these studies don't, follow different approaches, and but this is a kind of good information that we have, and the bottom line is that these countries do have a good potential to explore and expand the use of these renewable resources. Today, we are using, at the most, in some countries like Brazil and Peru, we are using the equivalent of 5% of the installed capacity is met by these sources, which is very modest. But if we look at the potential, the resources that are available, we can see that there's a lot of room to expand. The countries that we analyzed, they have Argentina and Colombia, for example, have 4% of their current installed capacity met by these sources. Mexico and Chile have only 2.5% of their current capacity. And we see a lot of room to explore, to expand these, the use of these resources. This slide shows that amongst the existing sources, the biomass, let me just try to arrow, let's see if it works. Okay. Biomass is the dominant technology or source that is used for electricity production. Then we have, at the moment, small hydro, and in third place, we have wind. Solar photovoltaics is still very small. Geothermal currently is mostly used in Central America and Mexico, but there is potential also in Chile and Argentina, which perhaps might be interesting to develop in the near future. If we look at country by country, where are these installed capacity? Most of it, you can see, it's located in Brazil, and currently a great part of this is biomass. Then you have small hydro, and the second largest country you have is currently is Argentina. Then you go to, I think this is Central America. Oh no, sorry, no. The second country is Mexico. Usually Brazil and Mexico, and then Argentina, or there's sometimes a swap between Argentina and Mexico. But due to the size of Brazil, most of these resources and activities are really concentrated in Brazil for the time being, for the good and for the and for the bad. Anyway, just to give you a summary about what I have said just now. So you keep in mind that we have still a very modest percentage of our installed capacity met by these sources. It doesn't mean that there isn't potential. There is potential, but we haven't been able to develop it fully due to several reasons, but then we can discuss a little bit more on that. Currently, biomass is the most important source that we have. It might change in the near future. Maybe wind will play an important role, but currently biomass is the dominant source of electricity production. We have all the countries that we have surveyed, we have studied, they have plans to expand the production, and we can see that in the next slides as well. And just to have this current picture. Brazil and Peru have 5% of the current capacity met by these sources, the wind, small hydro, and biomass. Then you have Argentina and Colombia with 4%, Mexico and Chile with 2.5% of their current capacity. Well, looking to the future, what are the drivers for this expansion of renewable electricity production in Latin America? We see that most of these countries are preoccupied with the rising oil prices, and they see these sources as a way to maintain some control of their domestic energy prices or electricity prices. So rising oil prices is in all these countries is part of the argument of pushing ahead with the renewables that we are talking about. At the same time, we are facing a good international environment where most of these technologies are going through these learning curves, which are showing a steep decline in costs, which favors their entrance in terms of being more competitive. The third driving factor that we find is most of these countries are also concerned with the environmental impacts of conventional technologies. And this is helping to shape new regulation and to make these technologies a little more attractive to local policymakers. Energy security is also an issue. Some countries have explicitly policy to diversify their electricity mix, and these again they see these technologies as part of that type of solution. So those are the four main drivers that we find that are helping these technologies in the near, and when I say near future, is up to 2020 or 2030 time frame. But we do find some different local, country-wise policy drivers. Like in Brazil, energy security and national energy security tends to be Brazil, Chile, and Central America and Mexico. National energy security tends to be something which is an important argument for favoring these technologies. Some of these countries have, very recently faced energy shortages, and so that's why this is on their screen. Environmental concerns, we found that Brazil and Chile had that in a more explicit way. Energy costs in Argentina and Colombia is present as an argument to favor the introduction of these technologies. Countries with good potential that you also find that they want to better explore this potential. So you see in Argentina, especially with wind in the south, biomass in the north. Brazil has good potential for wind, for solar, for biomass. Chile with solar, but also looking at other possibilities as well. Mexico has done a lot with wind and geothermal as well. Well, what can we say about policies, stakeholders, and the available funding? This is just a summary. More you find much more of that in the report. But the countries that have worked more on putting new policies or specific policies to promote renewables are Brazil, Mexico, Chile, and Argentina. To a lesser degree, we find interesting in kind of innovative policy in Peru and Colombia. And up to now, most of these efforts are being done around wind and biomass. Perhaps with the exception with Chile that is looking at a different approach. They are looking at renewables as a package. They are not doing specific legislation according to different technologies, but as a general picture, we find that wind and biomass are the technologies and resources that are mostly shaping these policies and regulations at the moment. In terms of policies, we have several different legal initiatives across countries. One issue that we find that sometimes there's a disconnect between what the policy says but there is a lack of financial incentive. So it doesn't mean that having policy really is doing much for these technologies. Most of the countries, this is a fact. There is a lack of, let me just highlight this here, the lack of financial incentives to promote. You have regulation, you have policy, but sometimes you lack these way to finance these initiatives. And some countries are, shaping specific mechanisms for the specific technologies. For the moment, we see that biomass has been the main target, especially in Brazil, and you find a little in Colombia as well. Wind is another technology that is being pursued in terms of policy and regulation. And thirdly, small hydro. Small hydro is let's say, relatively older technology, so there isn't much new things coming, but this hasn't been neglected by most of these countries. In terms of stakeholders, we had a look on the existing installed capacity of research centers, which this is more to do with are these countries, do these countries have intellectual capacity or technical capacity to promote and innovate, adapt the renewable technologies? So we had, in the report you will find information on that. We looked how the government has, what has been the role. Some governments have been more active than others, and this varies across countries. Regulators, some regulatory agencies are being more aggressive in terms of pushing new regulation and pushing the market. Others are just following whatever is happening elsewhere. Manufacturers, not all countries have manufacturers. This is something which most of the countries, with some exception, depending on the technology, we don't find manufacturers, local manufacturers. And the other important issue that we find missing in many of these countries are the lack of project developers as well. In terms of finance, this varies a lot. There is a good presence, or there's a presence of international banks and donors. Some countries like Brazil, the National Development Bank has played an important role in funding new projects. International agencies like GTZ, or now it's GIZ, we should correct this here, has also been very active in promoting solar and wind in many of these countries. And in also some countries, we do find direct involvement of the government in funding and facilitating projects. I put here just for you to have an idea of how we assembled the information we had. This is a matrix, and if you look at the colors, it's just the darker colors are the countries with more legal frameworks or incentives. There's too much information here, but just so that you can understand how we assembled information and how we made the comparison across countries. So some countries, as you see here in the top, they have more general regulation, like Chile has one of the most interesting regulations that are more general, but doesn't mean that they cannot be effective. But that's the way they are looking at the problem. Brazil, on the other hand, is the country with the most advanced and interesting specific regulation for specific technologies. And this is the way Brazil has been developing. And then you find more information. And here we also list the mechanisms that have been used in these several countries as well. So, but you can see there are a lot of blanks. It was very hard to find information on Venezuela. And so this is why there's a lot of blanks for Venezuela. And it's a country with very interesting potential as well. Okay. What can we say about, let's give some overview of this, the issue on policies and regulation. The highlights country-wise is Brazil, Chile, Peru, and Mexico. Those are the countries with a good or interesting policy and regulatory framework that if we want to have some reference, I think those are the ones that we should look at first. But all countries have some sort of policy to promote these technologies. And this is just to highlight a little bit more on what Brazil has done on specific technologies like biomass, and more recently wind and solar PV is something which is under process, but a lot should come out over the next month or so. And the other highlight is also Chile. I think they are doing something which is interesting and innovative and an interesting country to look at in terms of policies and regulation. Now, if we look about markets, these near-term markets for the next 10 years, and also technology, we see that wind is looking out as a very promising technology. All the official plans are really betting a lot on wind in their official electricity expansion plans. Biomass is the second one, for this near future, and we see, we expect a significant expansion of wind energy in Argentina, Brazil, and Chile mostly. Biomass, Brazil, Argentina, Central America, Colombia, and Peru. So this is more or less the split, considering this time frame that I'm referring to in terms of countries, which are the countries that are going to expand more, at least on their official plans, governmental plans, and the main technologies that are being pursued in these countries. In terms of
sorry, Gilberto. I think there are some messages about the sound. If you can just speak a bit louder, please. Thank you very much.
Oh, okay. Okay, so I got a message that I have to speak louder. I'll try. Fernando, buzz me again if I sort of get tired. And anyway.
Very well.
Okay, so these are when we talk about stakeholders, those are the ones we concentrated on. We tried to get information on project developers, manufacturers, ministries, governmental ministries, agencies, even regulatory agencies, trade associations, Chamber of Commerce and Industry, international banks, multilateral organizations, well, this is already a result. We were a bit disappointed to see, and maybe this is not a surprise anyway, but project developer is something which we don't find much in most of these countries. Again, just a glimpse of how we have assembled the information. This is a matrix that we built after collecting and analyzing the data. We sort of compared in qualitative terms according to technologies here, and according to the stakeholders. This is the top row, and obviously this also takes into account the different countries. And this is the kind of evaluation that we made. So for some technologies, we do find some manufacturers, like you have some biomass manufacturers. We have manufacturers in Argentina producing equipment that are used in biomass power plants. But if we compare to Brazil, for example, they are less in number and in production. And so this is the kind of way, this is the sort of logic that we built in order to organize the information that we collected. So it covers the main technologies that we, so we here went beyond the ones that I presented in the very first slide, because we were also interested in some others like ocean and CSP, concentrated solar power. But the information is not very reliable, because there isn't much activity anyway if we consider these technologies. Well, I hope I have adjusted my voice to the volume that can be understood. Let me just, we had a lot of information, and we thought it would be nice to combine the quantitative and qualitative information to make a more concise way to present the results in terms of what are the best technologies for the near future, considering the market, considering the existing regulation, and considering the activity of different stakeholders. So how do we pick up winners considering technologies and countries? Which are the countries that might be more in shape to develop these new markets for these new technologies? So these, we had the criteria that we used to evaluate these options were the ones I mentioned. We look at the market. This was the only quantitative parameter or criteria that we had. We used the information we had, the comparative information that we had on regulators and stakeholders to make this country-wise and technology-wise comparison. So this is just a small explanation. We, in fact, used the official high scenario and low scenario to make this analysis. And the two qualitative criteria are the regulation and the stakeholders that we used in our analysis. So this is the data, just a summary of the data, also available in the report. This like for Brazil, we use the low and high and so forth for each technology. Okay, so this is the market information, and these are the results. I didn't want to plot all the matrix because that's a lot of information. But if we look at the low market projections, which are the countries and technologies that really should be, there are in much better conditions. So we see that here in Brazil, for the East, and this is considering the time frame up to 2020. So we see that in Brazil and wind have good prospects, followed or again the other Brazil and biomass, and the Brazil with small hydro. Then you have Argentina with wind, Mexico with wind, and Chile with small hydro. Now, if we consider the high market projections, then you still have Brazil and wind, but Argentina comes as a second best option. Then you have the others that we have mentioned before. But with the high market projections, you have in the 6th place Mexico with wind and coupled with Argentina with solar PV. So these are the pairs that represent the most promising markets for this near future. And I should say that most of this was done because this work was done for the Copper Association, and we did coupled this market with the demand for copper as well. Okay, so this is the result, a sort of summary if we want to pick some winners, considering the current knowledge that we have and considering the trends that we saw from the information that we gathered. In terms of conclusions, and I think this is, this is my last slide. I do have some extra, but this is the last slide. I think the good news is that the expansion of renewable electricity in the countries is moving fast. A lot is going on over the last 2 or 3 years, and apparently this trend should continue. In terms of technology, the greatest opportunities seem to be really wind and biomass for the moment. We do find countries with nearly zero growth, and they haven't shown really much growth, but they have good potential. So those are the countries that maybe some initiatives should be stimulated because they have good potential, resource potential, like Venezuela, Colombia, and Central America. There are some countries with large potential, but they are also promoting the use of this potential in a relatively fast way. Like, and then we have these countries like Brazil, Argentina, Chile, and Mexico are the ones that are really doing a lot over the last few years. And according to the information that we have, this trend should continue over the next decade or so. In terms of policies, there are several initiatives, several legal and regulatory initiatives across the country. What we have not been doing well is really looking at the financial side of these initiatives. So this is the sort of interesting result. It's important to have policy, but it's certainly not enough. It's not sufficient to have policy in order to have this market development that the region needs and has the resources and could do much better, But we still have problems dealing with financing these initiatives. More specifically on regulation, this is a repetition of what I have said before. If we want to look at some references, Brazil has some interesting initiatives regulating specific technology. Chile has another approach which also is worth considering. But it's very early to really recommend a model. I think we still don't have a good model, regulatory model, but it's evolving and it's very dynamic. People involved in these issues are, some are very good and are aware that new and more aggressive regulations should take place. And if about stakeholders, our main finding was the project developers are really in a small number, and they don't really make much. They do not make an influence on how policy is, and this is an important aspect, especially if we talk about financing and funding these projects. There aren't many project developers because there isn't much funding, and there isn't much funding because there isn't enough project developers, putting pressure in order to make these things happen. So this is something which is interesting to look and see ways that we could have more people on the ground looking at potential possibilities and doing business. We still don't have much impact because, as I said, it's still a very modest percentage of our installed capacity. I tend to be optimistic, but we still have to see what will come. Fernando, this is my last slide. I just have some slides which just make some more detail on the multi-criteria analysis, which I just I'm saving if there is question for that. Otherwise, I should give back the floor to you and see what happens next.
Okay, Gilberto, thank you very much for your presentation, for interesting report. So I suggest we switch to this new layout and we go for the session on questions and answers. So please find on the right column the speaker contacts and also some links to download the report. So please click on the language that you prefer, then click on Browse to. Then your browser will go there. Otherwise, you have the URL indicated when you click on the report selected by you. Very well. So we provide as well on the lower right corner the link to the web page where the presentation of today, as well as the recording, will be uploaded. So in some hours the material will be available, and you will be anyway notified through a newsletter when the material is available. You will have available the links. Very well. So excellent. So let's go for questions and answers. So Gilberto, I invite you to click on Participant View on the Q&A window, and then I will be managing the questions. So let me go to them. Okay, so there's first question about hydropower, why not being considered as renewable energy? Well, so I suppose that This is, of course,
Okay.
renewable, but big hydro is often excluded from this kind of analysis. So please.
Yeah. So I give the answer orally, or do I write it?
Orally, please.
Okay. Ricardo, I think I said in the beginning, in this study we excluded medium and large hydroelectric plants. We only considered small hydro. That means plants with capacity below 30 megawatts. And in some countries, the definition of small hydro is below 20. So it's a sort of obviously, if we were to include large hydro plants, it's an entirely different business, and so that's why I'm not. I don't want to discuss whether it's renewable or not, but for the sake of the purpose of the subject, large hydro is an entirely different business and way of dealing with the technology and the market and the regulation, as compared to the ones that we concentrated. Does that answer your question?
So yeah, we will ask Ricardo whether you provided the right answer.
Okay.
Or the
There's another one.
Yes. So the next one is about the difference between low market projections and high market projections. Could you explain it again, please? Thank you.
Yes. As I said, we looked at the governmental official electricity projections up to year 2020, and we chose, some countries have several scenarios, some countries have only 2 scenarios, and we chose the high energy scenario and the low energy scenario. So these high market and low market are related to these official projections. So the numbers that we quote in the report are the official electricity demand projections using what they call a high scenario and the country whatever they call the low energy scenario, low energy demand scenario. That's what means high and low market projections.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. So we have another question. What are the specific governmental incentives to promote PV in Brazil?
Okay, this is something which is, as I think I said in the presentation, is something which the regulatory agency and the Ministry of Energy are advancing. We should expect over the next 2 or 3 months, I believe, some regulation to be put for public consultation. So there has been a lot of effort over the last year to develop and propose new regulation that can help to promote solar PV in Brazil, especially for grid connected systems. So this is something which I think over this current year we should see in Brazil being implemented by the electricity regulatory agency.
Okay, very well. Thank you, Gilberto. So next question is about solar energy. So Chile and Peru are the countries with high solar irradiation, one of the most in the world. And Chile has one of the highest electricity prices in Latin America. So how is it possible to foresee only 4 megawatts of PV power in Chile by 2020. Nowadays, it seems to be about megawatts of photovoltaic projects in environmental impact authorization process. So if you have additional elements on this, thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you for this information. As I said, we based our numbers on the official projections that the government made available to us, or that has been publicly available. So what I can say is that unless they revise their own projections, that's the number that it's still in the electricity expansion plan for Chile. It happens in Brazil as well. Our source was the National Energy Plan, the 2030 National Energy Plan. The one that is coming, that should be coming out this year, will provide different numbers. And also I should mention that maybe it doesn't mean, it doesn't mean that the 400 megawatt PV projects are really going to be implemented, right? These are expected potential installed capacity, but it doesn't mean, I think it's important to highlight that you are saying that they are in the process of getting authorization, and it doesn't mean that all of these projects are going to be in place. So I think we should clarify that in your statement as well.
Okay, thank you, Gilberto. Indeed, I think the situation is such that for the time being, there are more discussions than clear plans or clear power installed. So, in the European Union, there is a clear directive to reach, as an average, 20% of renewables in the energy consumption, which means about 35% of electricity generation by renewables as an average. So, Gilberto, maybe you have something to add on this, whether some countries in Latin America have already defined such kind of policy and fixed it from now.
Fernando, I don't see this question, and I think...
Oh, no, it was just a comment, actually. So, just to complete the
so can you repeat?
question.
Sorry, I was trying to see whether my screen, where on my screen was this. Okay.
So, this is not a written question. It was just to complete the previous question on what is happening in Chile. So probably part of the answer is the fact that not every country has a clear policy for the coming years, and this might be evolving, and contrary to other places in the world where this has been already fixed, for instance, the European Union. So sometimes if we tend to compare the situation, it's probably not the same, and in the coming years we will see the situation evolving quite fast in regions like Latin America.
Right, yeah. I think that's correct, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Gilberto. So next question from Vladimir. Do you see any technologies being great competitive in the near future, or would they require incentives to develop for a long time?
Solar PV in Brazil in few years' time is going to be competitive. Biomass is already competitive in Brazil. Wind is becoming competitive. It was competitive, and it's already last year. but over the next, sorry, let me correct. The solar PV maybe over the next 5 to 10 years is going to be it's going to be competitive. It will depend on which region of the country some regions in Brazil have higher prices, and depending on, according to the time of the day, this solar PV will be more competitive than in other places. But biomass is already competitive in Brazil, and wind as well. We had a last year in Mexico and Brazil, it's already being competitive in the present context.
Okay, thank you, Gilberto. Well, indeed, at general level, wind energy is close to competitiveness with other technologies. Well, it depends on country by country basis and wind resource, but countries like Sweden have already planned to eliminate feed-in tariff, so additional support, because they are, with the current or expected market conditions, they are already competitive. So no further support is required. So in some countries, it's already been competitive wind energy for, let's say, huge or wholesale electricity generation. And as well, photovoltaics, if we consider the consumption at small scale level, where the distribution electricity prices are applicable, then prices are already quite close, especially in countries with high solar resource. So countries like Spain are expected in the coming 3 years to be as cheap as the electricity distribution tariff. So it means that on country basis and on generation or consumption basis, some technologies are already or close to be in the coming 2 or 3 years competitive, and then no further support required to promote them. Okay.
Yeah, maybe if Odon, my colleague from Mexico, if he can add anything. But anyway, if he might have some special comments especially for Mexico. But okay, anyway.
Okay. Okay, I'm afraid we cannot manage the voice so easy. So maybe I don't know.
Okay.
I'm afraid we cannot include on the spot additional speakers.
All right. Yeah.
So anyway, we invite them to type on the introductions window if there are additional comments on situation in Mexico. Thank you. So we have another question. What role play microgrids to improve renewable energy penetration in Latin American countries? This kind of analysis has been done in European Union, USA, or Japan. Did you cover this?
No, we did not cover this in this report, and I am only familiar with what is happening in Brazil. Microgrids, or we call here mini grids, but I think it's the same thing. It's still it's not clear how the regulation and how the government. It's still some fuzzy area in terms of regulation. There's a discussion, but there isn't a clear regulation. But certainly, these microgrids or mini-grids are an important way to promote these technologies. I have no doubt on that. it seems to me that we have not yet have, well, the government or the regulatory agency has not yet a clear view on how to manage this. This is for the time being, but I think on technical grounds this should help a lot the technologies that we are talking about, especially if we talk about places where they are not grid connected yet.
Okay. Very well. Well, I see that we have tens and tens of questions, so it proves how this topic is relevant for our audience. So we should probably consider a second session with a shorter presentation and more time for questions and answers, because definitely we will not be able to cover all of them. So we will try to solve this either by providing a written answer and then publishing in the website, or organizing a second session, as it seems to be a hot topic. So thank you very much for your interest. We will try to do our best to cover all your questions. In the meanwhile, we will proceed as we are doing one by one. Thank you. So I will send next question. Anything like a feed-in tariff yet? Well, I suppose that the question is whether there are countries having implemented a feed-in tariff policy. Thank you.
I think the largest case about that is you have more information on the report, but Brazil had a large program, a 3.3 gigawatt program, which is based on feed-in tariffs. And this is called the ProInfa, and I would like to refer you to the report for more information on that. But that's one example of the application of the mechanism in a Latin American country.
Okay, excellent. So indeed, you have on the right side of the window the list of reports. Well, it's the same report in several languages. So indeed, please click there and have a look. You will probably find some answers to your questions. Well, in the meanwhile, we will provide a favor to our good colleague Ajit. So Ajit asks, which technologies do you see being used for rural electrification? So rural electrification is certainly a very interesting and full topic. So what can you say about this?
You know, the interesting, I don't know where you come from, but Latin America is a very urbanized place in the world, and so we don't have. I mean, the amount of effort that is put into rural electrification is far less than you see in other parts of the world. But and here it's also very site specific. But usually you find small hydro or solar PV being used. There are some experiments using biomass. They haven't been very successful. Even solar PV, it's a sort of mixed history of failures, more failures perhaps here in Latin America than success. But for the future, I mean, those are the ones that we have to look at: solar PV, biomass, wind when that's available as well. And okay, it's hard to say. It's hard to pick up one because it's, as I said, it's very site specific. It depends very much what is the load that you want to supply.
Okay, very well. So if we understand well, the rural electrification is not that urgent in Latin America as it can be
Yes.
in other regions of the world, like,
Yeah, like Africa
India,
or Asia.
or Africa or Asia. Okay, excellent. So yeah, we'll definitely try to cover these aspects in upcoming webinars.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I have another question asking about concentrated solar power, or also said as thermal, solar thermal electricity in the north of Mexico.
Yeah, I would love to have my colleague to answer that. Can we do that offline later?
Yeah, definitely. So we'll try to provide this written answer, and in the meanwhile, if he's connected, he can as well type something on the interactions window. Very well. So we have a question more related to well, market opportunities. So would you be able to express the potential growth in megawatts or in dollars per country by technology?
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's a good question. We didn't do that so explicitly in the report because, as I said, our assessment was not only considering the official plans. I mean, if you go to the primary sources, the national electricity extension plans, you will get the information that you want. What we did was to combine that information with our analysis on the current regulation, because sometimes governmental plans tend to be more optimistic, but they don't have the right regulation in place yet. And some countries don't have this conversation between what the guys doing the long or medium term projections and the guys working on the policy and the regulatory side. So we didn't have that information the way that you are asking here. But my suggestion is to look at the official plans. Then you get the growth in megawatts, and well, the costs you don't find that, but you do find the amount of expected installed capacity by technology.
Okay, very well. Thank you. So in the meantime, Odon De Buen, who is the consultant that contributed to this work for Mexico, indicates in the interactions window that CSP is not in the formal plans for the time being, and the fact that there has been a project by CFE that hasn't been implemented for years. So it seems that CSP is a pending topic in Mexico. But it doesn't mean that there is huge CSP potential. There is, but it's not in the plans of the government. So it seems that CSP in Mexico will have to wait. Considering the offer of the various renewable technologies, CSP has still some way before good price reduction, well, good cost of energy reduction. So if the government has to put on the table an amount of money to promote or just to generate renewable electricity, there are for sure some technologies which are today cheaper than CSP. However, in the coming years, due to the huge solar potential and due to the cost reduction expected, this could be considered. But well, today it seems reasonable that CSP is not strongly promoted in every country. The countries having promoted this have, to some extent, an interest in developing their own industry and, well, at the end, generating an expertise and exporting this expertise. So, well, I think that's probably the situation with CSP. Okay, so, well, we will probably run for 5 or 10 additional minutes. I see that the audience is quite close following this this session, so we will try to remain here for some more time. So the next question: how much does the market for small distributed systems for residential, commercial drive the potential? I don't know whether the question is clear. About, I think, small systems.
Yeah. We didn't go into that level of detail in this particular study, but my feeling is that and I can mostly speak from what I know here in Brazil. I think in Brazil this would be drivers, especially commercial and residential areas in highly populated areas in our big metropolis. So in these places where we also have problems to supply electricity, the growing demand of electricity, I think those are areas where these market segments are going to drive the potential for the distributed technologies that we are talking about, and especially with solar systems.
Okay, very well.
Yeah, but some governmental plans are also looking at high central plants. So when we talk about wind, most of the official plans are talking about wind farms, because it's also something more manageable in terms of the planning. But I do see the scope for and a drive in some parts of Latin America, as I said, in highly populated areas for residential and commercial markets.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. So next question: did you analyze how the carbon credit market can help the development of renewables in Latin America?
Yeah, that's a good question. We didn't do that, but obviously I think that's something someone should take up, and it will help. Not all countries. It might not be very useful for Brazil, but certainly for Mexico, certainly for Argentina, certainly for Chile and Colombia. This carbon credit market can play a role in this development. So this is something which is open to further research from. And maybe I invite someone to take up this issue.
Okay, very well. So yeah, we have at Renewable Energy program covered partially the carbon market related projects in non-Annex 1 countries. So we have run some webinars with Doman, a consulting firm specialized in this, so you can check it at Leonardo Energy website. So some projects with biogas and well, others that were run in basically in Latin America region as well. So as this might be a field of interest, we noted we will probably offer in the coming weeks or months another webinar on the current status of carbon markets and the support to Latin America projects on renewables. Okay, so let's go for how do you see PV regulation developing in Brazil?
Okay, I think it's going to be very interesting. As I said, this is something which is currently in development. It's not a final. We don't have a final regulation yet. As I said, we should have something put on for public consultation very soon. But it looks, from what I could read and have access to, it looks very promising to create a market, an interesting market for solar PV here in Brazil. Considering has a high, okay, this is part of the question, right?
Yes, yes, indeed. Very well. A question from Laurie Melissa. Venezuela has one of the greatest points for wind energy, but the price of fuel there is too low for renewables to compete. How can we introduce the wind or any other technology there? Thank you.
Right. Yeah. This is the problem with Venezuela, and that's why Venezuela lacks a strategy for their energy future. It's very unfortunate. I wish I could say more, but Venezuela has good resources. As I said, we said that, but has not done anything over the last years, and it apparently, or at least officially, is not doing anything. And oil prices there, or electricity prices there, is one of the facts, right? But it should be part of a vision to the future, and really work on several ways, several fronts, to promote a better use of your renewable resources. So I don't have a recipe that would fit all, because it needs more study of what is possible there. But if we, maybe it's something that if you could work with me, I would love to learn more about the actual options that we could suggest for the Venezuelans to adopt. But without price and without a strategy, I really find a bit difficult to comment more on this issue.
Very well, thank you. So another question, are there any plans, policies for interconnectors between Latin American countries to export surplus power, which is indeed a relevant question, as it's seen in
very
Europe
good question.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, very good question. This is something which has been pursued in Latin America, especially in the southern part of Latin America, over the last 20, perhaps 30 years. We still discuss a lot. We haven't really advanced that much. We do have sort of by lateral agreements. Technically there are some, places to connect, but we still don't have a policy or agreements, formal agreements between governments that really would make these power exchanges something more smooth. We do have a history of interruptions depending on whether one country has some supply problems and then he just shuts down the connection to the other country. So the recent history is not very favorable. But looking regionally, this is one of the strategies that Latin American countries regionally should pursue with much more effort. The technology is there, the potential is there, and if we want to make ourselves more efficient in the use of these resources, interconnection between our systems is something that we should really work hard to get it done.
Okay, very well. I will send some questions which are related to the same topic. So the first, well, we come back to the previous topic. So given the huge distribution losses, are centralized power plants using renewables the right approach? Why do not see a trend toward smaller distributed systems? There is additional comment by Ajit Advani about the fact that International Energy Agency estimates 31 million people without access to electricity in Latin America, which is probably a low percentage, but absolute number remains huge. Do you see renewable energy-based mini-grids as a solution? So I think these are comments going to the same direction. How do you see that?
Yes, I do see that as one solution. It's important to really, as I say, these technologies are very site-specific. If we are, and it's very hard to give a solution that would cover all the possibilities. In Latin America, most of these these remaining people are sometimes people in what we call slums or favelas. So their access to electricity is an entirely different situation where compared to people that are in very remote areas where the supply then it's a different, it has to be a different approach. Then mini-grids is the solution, and the source would depend very much whatever is available. In some areas of the Andes, you don't have biomass. You have a lot of sun and wind, but then you have sometimes a very low load, and so all these things have to be factored in. There are some difficulties in maintenance of these systems that it will depend. So it's hard to have a solution, for all. It's a matter of looking where these people are located, whether they are urban or rural, how far they are from centers that can provide them with better maintenance, whether they can do them themselves, and what are the one important thing is how can we provide a system which maintain not only which is also financially sustainable. These systems need to be in place, but they need to be paid for somehow, and some countries are doing that. And they are seeing these systems, providing these systems also with some sustainable financial support. So, well, I think it's very hard for me to give an answer as to the second one, but mini-grid, it's something interesting to look at, and will perhaps be one solution for most situations.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Well, we will remain until for well, say 5 minutes. We have been running for 1 hour, 20 minutes, so quite successful topic today. We will try to do a second session to cover everybody's expectation. Well, just on the same topic of small grids, there is a comment coming from Coronado. Main incentive mechanisms for Argentina and Peru focus high voltage grids. In Colombia, there are regulations that were created for isolated systems, but not really focusing on microgrids. Together with this, this person adds the fact that the mini grids not only provide electricity, but also social development and small industry opportunities. So if you have something additional to say on this, otherwise.
No, I think the comments are good, and yeah, go ahead.
Okay. What's your opinion about the conveniency of implementing CO2 taxes to discourage energy production from fossil fuels?
Well, look, taxes, new taxes, I think it depends. In Latin America, I think, and perhaps most countries, talking about additional taxes, especially on electricity prices, is very complicated, because most countries have already a big part of their final electricity tariff is already covered by taxes. So an additional CO2 tax would be very complicated. What makes sense, I think, is countries that are designing their climate change policies to have a broader and more comprehensive way to discourage electricity production from fossil fuels. It might be that tax can be a good solution, but I don't think it applies in general. But I would not disconnect if we are looking at fossil fuels and new taxes or ways of discouraging fossil fuel use. Let's look at the national climate change plans, and let's work together and make a more comprehensive approach to deal with that. So that would be my approach. I really don't see putting more taxes something that will do the trick. It has to have a more comprehensive approach, and it has to be managed within the framework of a national climate change program.
Yeah. The question on taxing CO2 emissions is, well, a way to find or to look for funds to cover the expenses for the mechanism support of renewables. Mm-hmm. So at the end, this money has to come from anywhere. So depending mm-hmm. on the architecture chosen by each country, we can find well, additional tax on electricity prices, which is commonly used in Europe. But you can also find other models which are remunerated by taxes. So the less green resources pay for the greener ones.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, very well. So just to go to the end for now, a question about biomass. So
Mm-hmm.
Oscar Salinas seems to surprised to learn this high share of biomass in renewables
Mm-hmm.
in Latin America, as he expected solar. Which are the main technologies, applications of biomass for electricity generation in Latin
Mm-hmm.
America?
Well,
Combustion or digestion? Thank you.
No, it's currently it's combustion, and and this is mostly in Brazil because of the sugar industry. As you may know, the country has a large ethanol production, and the electricity generated, the cogeneration in these ethanol plants are significant, especially in the sugar cane area in the southeast of Brazil and more also in the northeast of Brazil. But it's mainly combustion technologies which are evolving and being more efficient. We should, in the future, have gasification as well, and that would still provide more electricity from the same amount of biomass. So the main technologies being used for biomass are combustion-related technologies. And in the perhaps in the next 10 years, we will see some gasification technologies also there. Biomass gasification, I mean.
Okay, very well. So thank you very much, Gilberto, for this very interesting presentation. I see here tens of questions pending. So we will definitely try to address this as it seems a hot topic. I take advantage to announce 2 upcoming webinars in the month of June about very serious studies on covering the energy needs on worldwide basis 100% by renewables. So the first one done by Stanford University and the second one done by EcoFreeze ordered by WWF. So these 2 visions on how renewables could cope with energy needs of the world is definitely something that should interest our audience today. So I invite you to go to Leonardo Energy website to find these announcements. So the first one is announced, the second one is upcoming. You will be anyway notified by newsletter of these upcoming webinars. So, well, in any case, thank you very much, everybody, for your participation. We will try to give a continuity to this session, so answering these questions or organizing a second one. And, well, see you soon. Gilberto, I let you say the final words.
Well, okay, thank you very much for bearing with me for such a long time. I hope something of our work and our presentation made sense and contributed to your knowledge of the region and the near-term prospects on renewable electricity. Thank you very much for all, and have a good day.
Excellent, thank you.